the stories that I heard from SoCal of the refrigerated trucks. And those weren't just tall tales. Like that was actually what was happening in LA, right? People driving around trying to just find someone that'll help them.
Like every Friday for like months, because we don't really work on the weekends, but we need space in our fridge for, anywhere from 20 to 35 cases, depending on the weekend. I'd have to move decedents from the main refrigeration unit into their external trailer so that drivers had places to put the bodies while we weren't there. Or else there was literally no room for them to even enter. Like, not only were the shelves full of decedents, but the rolling racks that were put in front of the shelves also filled all of the space. So you had to remove the rolling racks to even get anywhere in there.
So you had to pay Tetris just to get.
Absolutely.
That's insane. Welcome to the Direct Cremation Podcast with your hosts, Tyler Yamasaki and Will DeMichaelis. Right. Hey, Will.
What's up, Tyler? How we doing?
Good.
Good.
Welcome to our first video recording of our podcast. How's it feel?
Feel very welcome. I love seeing you. Can't wait to get this going.
Yeah, I think you're going to need a few more pictures in your background, though, at some point.
Oh, yeah. I'll decorate it. I have some Monets on the way and some Van Goghs to hang in here.
Nice.
It's a joke.
Okay. Yeah, as you can see, I have a bookshelf, so we're doing all right.
Looking good.
Yeah, thank you. Cool. So the reason I kind of wanted to start this is I think there's better ways to consume media just from audio. So that's one of the reasons. But I also have a presentation that I kind of wanted to go over today.
Cool. Yeah.
Being here at Parting Pro, as we've run, as we've seen our customers run 150,000 online arrangements through our system, there's been a lot of surprising data we've seen. And a lot of the data was pretty stable, but once COVID hit, we did see pretty big changes, and a lot of what happened has not gone back. And so I kind of wanted to present some of this data to you and get your take on what you think is happening, Will, and see if this kind of affected your business in the same way. But yeah, feel free. Some of this will be Q&A, so I will be reading off some of these questions, and hopefully some of you can play along. All right?
Yeah, this is super exciting. I'm so excited to see what you learned. This is great.
This is all from the data side, so
yeah, great.
Hope you guys like data. So just a brief background about Parting Pro. If you don't know what Parting Pro is an online arrangement and case management system. It gives funeral homes the ability to serve their families online, in person, or both, in a mix of ways. Since 2018, the funeral homes with Parting Pro have served over 150,000 families through the Parting Pro online arranger. So a lot of this data that you're going to see comes from an aggregated amount of our data from all of our customers. So one of the big things that I want to talk about is COVID really triggered a digital and e-commerce turning point in death care. Really the whole world and consumerism in general, but really in death care, we saw a big change, and I don't think that it's going to go back. So to start, how we're going to play this, Will, I wanted to make it exciting for you. A little bit of Q&A, test you on some of this. So first question, what is the most common decedent first name of all the decedents that have gone through the Parting Pro arranger? A, Robert, B, James, C, William, or D as in David?
Okay, I gotta search my memory bank for all my EDRS entries. I'm gonna go with A, Robert.
You are correct. Robert was the most common decedent first name. It's also my father's name, so he has a very basic name. Yeah.
Does he go by Robert, Rob, or Bob?
It depends on who's calling for him. My grandma, his mom called him Bobby.
Okay.
His brother is Robert too, or his brother-in-law is Robert. So he goes by
Gotcha.
Rob, and then my dad goes by Robert. So, All
right.
So
nice.
a basic breakdown of what an online arrangement looks like. When we pulled all of our data of all the total contract totals of all of our cases, we actually found that most of our online arrangements will happen between the $800 to $1,200, $1,400 range. Pretty much like 90% of all of our contracts, though, were less than $2,250.
Yeah.
And I know you saw that at Omega Society. I mean, you guys were priced relatively low, right?
Right. Yeah. I think our online arrangement, average was probably like $1,050 to $1,125, something in that range. Yeah.
And I think a thing to think about and why this is important, if you are thinking about doing something online or having an online arrangement, if you're one of the ones that think you're going to sell a $3,500 direct cremation online, it's usually not going to happen.
Right.
Unless it's a very specific case, it's a very specific type of family. For the most part, people aren't as comfortable doing everything completely online, maybe over $2,500. So just something to keep in mind. All right. So the average contract total before February 20 of all of our customers, Will, you said yours was about 10 to 11. Ours was actually 1225.87, which kind of falls in line where you are, a little bit higher. You guys were definitely on the lower end, as you are in California, Southern California, that is. Yeah. But other parts of the country are definitely more expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. What about the average contract total since February 20? So after February 20, once we saw kind of COVID hit and change things, what do you think happened? Do you think it went down or up?
I think it went up, and I would say on the aggregate, I'll probably add 15% to that, just to kind of, let's see, that would be like 125 plus 50, $175. So I'll put it at I'll go 1375.
Ooh, you are super close. It was actually 1394.51. So we did see about a 16, 17% increase since February of 20. There's an extra $168 in additional revenue due to the changes in consumerism. So before I break it down, because I am going to break this down, why did you guess that?
My guess was that based on a couple of things, I would say that a lot of funeral homes capitalized on one or a few things, taking the opportunity to increase their basic service charge. They were doing more work. The work was harder. They felt like it was deserved. Also, inflation narratives also contributed to that as well, I presume, probably more recently than in 2020, 21. Mm-hmm. And I'd say also kind of with the trends in digital consumerism, I think it gave a lot of people the opportunity to buy multiple pieces of merchandise online rather than one. So I kind of just guessed that, if you buy an urn, if you also see your keepsakes page, maybe you add 2 or 3 keepsakes as well, just because you're going through the arrangement process. So combination of merchandise and an increase in basic service charges.
Wow, Will, you are pretty good. It's like you've run a funeral home before. Yeah. So if we break down the contract, the services before was about $1,000. Merchandise was $55. The additional services $125, and cash advances were $41. So that equals the total pre-COVID. After COVID, we did see our services go up about 13%. Our merchandise more than doubled. So what you said is correct. People were increasing their service prices. Things were getting hard out there. I know a few of our customers had to raise prices just because they couldn't handle demand. I know you guys were in Southern California, had that pretty bad too.
Yeah.
And with the merchandise, we saw more people spending more money on merchandise, maybe buying multiple pieces instead. Mm-hmm. I think some people had probably money saved away and were now like, I can't do a funeral, so now I could maybe spend a little bit more on a nice piece of jewelry or a nice upgrade or something.
Right.
Additional services go down. So viewings and stuff like that obviously couldn't have a lot of those, right?
Yeah.
And cash advances. So what's funny is we started seeing people order like 10 death certificates. Like it seems like the amount of death certificates went up and people were just buying more. I don't know if that's true, what you saw, but
it is. So I think this, again, this is just anecdotal, but again, in my experience, with like a more online based approach to purchasing these services, people were doing a lot more of their research online. And if you do a Google search on how many death certificates do I need when someone dies, a very common answer is 10. Like from estate planners to estate lawyers and things like that. So if someone does that kind of Google search when they're already on the internet doing searches for cremation companies, it's pretty common.
But what were people doing before that? Were they just buying one or two?
Our business was probably, the average was 5.
Okay.
5 was the average. To be honest with you, the 41 before COVID seems low. That sounds low to me. But
well,
I don't know.
California does have those $21 gift certificates when there's like
$4
ones.
now.
Is it 24?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it did just go up. I know in certain states it's like $4 or something.
Oh yeah. Oh geez, that's great. That's great. Good for them.
Yes. So yeah, service fees and merchandise made up the majority of the average growth through COVID. So one thing that I thought was really interesting when I saw this, and we talk a lot about, not necessarily being able to be everything to everyone. I think we've had guests who are very much and very sure of what they do and who they serve and who their product is for, right? Whether that be services or whatever. One of the interesting things that I saw from our data is the number of packages offered online was only 2.8. And I think most funeral homes will say that they have more than 2 or 3 packages, right?
Sure.
But as you come to this internet or come online, you want to pare that down so you're not inundating the family with a million choices, especially when it might be more of a self-serve type thing or something that they're expected to go through on their own, right?
Right.
And I know that while you were at Omega Society, this is one of the things that you guys fell into too as well. 4 out of our top 5 customers only had 1 package, right?
That's us.
So yeah. For those that don't remember, you guys did a lot of cremations a year.
Yeah, we did.
Saw a lot of families. Yeah. But you guys only had 1 package, right?
Yeah. We basically used that first page of the checkout as a description of our basic service fee, essentially. And then you're basically building a cremation starting with the non-declinable fee. It's kind of how we used it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever experimented with having multiple packages and listing different things out, or did you always kind of start that way?
We always started that way. I think the only thing that we dabbled like thinking about was like a science care package, like a free, essentially, type thing.
But it's like a completely different offering.
Right. It's a completely different offering. Yeah.
Another thing, 2 out of our top 20 customers offer burials. So that means 18 of our top 20 do not offer burials. That might be a little bit different in person, but for the most part, our top 20 customers are very cremation focused and do not offer burials.
That's 10%. Yeah. That's when I was working on designing packages for Parting Pro, I tried putting a burial package on there, but I found that it was just too much customization in the burial planning process, that it just didn't lend itself well to anything pre-populated on an online checkout. It's just not as conducive as cremation, just with less options. Yeah.
And also your business was not set up to take a massive amount of
not really
burial families, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's a new one. For $1 million, how often do families choose the black plastic container that comes as like, I guess, default with a cremation and a direct cremations. Let me go through the options. A, 87%, B, 82%, C, 75%, and D, 67%.
I'm going between B and C. I'm kind of scared to answer B because that's over forfeit. I'm going to go C, 75%, 3 out of 4.
All right. The answer is actually 67%.
Okay.
I will say that I would say your data is probably skewed a little bit higher, only
Definitely.
because you were a very direct cremation focused business who does compete a lot on price. But as you go up, I think you will find that people will, given the right circumstance and also presented in the right way, people actually were upgrading a lot more than. I was actually surprised by this when I actually ran the data. I thought it was going to be like 90%, but it was D, 67%. And I kind of wanted to bring this up, but do you feel that families that were coming through, I mean, there were obviously a subset of families who were just, give me the lowest price. I want to do this for as cheaply as possible. But do you feel that there was a subset of families that started off that way, but it's not that they were means restricted? So meaning that they did have the money to maybe spend more. They just they came to you because you were the most affordable, but were then upgrading themselves or spending more on other things.
Yeah, I'd say the most common scenario would, again, not necessarily determined by means, but more determined by process simplicity. Mm-hmm. So choosing us based on process simplicity and price. Mm-hmm. And then once they feel, oh, I have this process under control, I have the next steps planned, I can now think about merchandise that I want to take dad home in. And then like we get a follow up and say, hey, when I come in and pick up my loved one's remains, do you have urns I can look at? Mm. So that became part of the process, and actually even had to change our scheduling. When we were scheduling people for pickup appointments, we implemented to ask a clarifying question, like, do you plan on looking at urns? Because that affected how long they would be in our office. Because someone just picking up a utility urn, that takes 12 minutes and a couple of signatures. But the choice of keepsakes and other merchandise, that's another arrangement, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, stuff like that.
Got it. Okay. So you had to change your process with an additional sales meeting almost when.
Yep. Left to the end, because they would just put it at the end of the process for them as a kind of a capstone to their experience.
Why do you think they only chose the most basic version then to begin with?
The utility urn?
Yeah.
A few reasons. One can be means as a determining factor. Mm-hmm. Two can be an acceptance that their loved one didn't want anything. They were explicit about wanting something simple. Keep me in a plastic box. I don't care. I'm not here anymore.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. And
I hear the coffee can thing a lot.
Coffee can, exactly. Yeah. I'm all for that too, by the way. Any type of special container, whatever. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So for those of you listening audio, you won't be able to see this, but I have a collection of urns, some brass, some wood, all different prices listed here. I'm going to actually have Will think of one in his mind. Will, do you have one? Mm-hmm. All right. What is the most purchased urn throughout our online arrangements? All right. I'm going to start eliminating. Ready? Got it?
Yeah. Do I name it?
You could, but I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the first round.
Are you going to eliminate a few at a time?
Yep. Did yours disappear?
Mine disappeared. Yeah. but now I'm going to go with the top one, the top wooden box on the right. Like the
no key, just a simple
wood.
Box.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still there. Well, it's gone.
And now between these three, I'm going to go with either the key box or the purple urn.
All right, last round.
I'm going to stay with purple. Yeah.
Yep. It is the purple adult brass urn. Yes. I will say before we solidify this as the number one, this was the number one by volume, by specific line item. But I will say that the boxes, there are multiple versions of boxes, right? Yeah. Different colors, different woods, ones with locks, ones without. So I feel like if we were to add all of those up, it would probably outdone this one. But if you took it just by pure SKU, this was the number one selling urn. It retails for $179, which is on the cheaper end.
Yeah.
And the average sales price of all urns since March 2020 was $172.58. And so I know what some of you may think, that this sounds cheap, but to get in the mind of a online consumer who is, let's say, buying a $700 cremation, to add in a $500 ceramic hand-painted urn and doubling the price,
right,
is not necessarily something that you're going to see a lot, right?
Right. No, you're not.
But when you add in a smaller purchase, that's more of an add-on and less of an entire financial decision on whether I want this one or not. I think you will see that lowering the price will actually net you more in the long run because you are going to sell more, right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
What was your number one seller that you thought?
The royal purple brass urn, the royal blue brass urn, so that same urn but in blue, the Duncan wood urn, and the timeless pewter, that silver one with the bands. Yeah,
those do really well. Yeah, those are like the classic traditional ones.
Yeah,
right?
Very classic, simple choices. Yeah.
How much were you pricing them at?
We had them at $195.
Okay,
is that right?
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have customers sometimes that try to add, like, is it cloisonné?
Yeah, cloisonné.
Yeah, and they're like $750, and I'm like, I don't think I've seen one of those be sold through our system ever.
No.
So yeah. All right, a little quiz for you. This shows a graph. It steadily rises throughout the pandemic, has come down a little. What would you say this is? I will buy you dinner at any restaurant in LA.
And this is basically like a metric of any type of service or merch or anything.
This is a metric within death care. Yeah. You'll never get it. I'll just tell you. This was my weight during the pandemic. Got him.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Gyms were closed.
Oh, you're coming down. You're coming down.
Yeah, no. I've gotten a little bit more active, leaving the house now and again. So
Good.
Yeah.
That we have the same graph, just so you know. The same graph.
It was getting a little rough at the end of those 2 years when we were kind of locked inside in California. Yeah. COVID really pushed the limits of funeral home operations. I know you felt it. I know like all of our past guests have felt it. One thing that I want to share here is e-commerce has really grown steadily over the past, decade. And every year since 2015, it's grown steadily about 15%, 10 to 15%, right? In the year 2020, we actually saw a bump of over 30% growth in e-commerce. And since then, it hasn't slowed down. So I think the notion that we're going to go back to the way things were, or the notion that technology or things like that are not something that we need to do is a little bit naive, because the data shows that we really did push ourselves 4 or 5 years in the future, and it's not slowing down.
No.
So I think those that were fortunate enough to have things in place before COVID kind of were able to at least survive fairly okay. Maybe not fairly okay, but at least not blow up, and others did not. Another thing we saw, arrangements doubled in March of 2020. Online arrangements doubled. So our customers that were doing things online saw their arrangements double. March was the craziest spike. I don't know. It was like probably one of the craziest. And then it leveled off, but it actually remained more than double what it was. So for those thinking that, the online thing is not coming back, I would say it's going to stay.
Yeah, you're seeing mostly like higher lows through that graph, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't go back down. I mean, our system, obviously we've added more customers, but we've had months under 2,000 arrangements going through our system in January, as early as January of 2020, and then March hit over like 7,000. That was not the peak. That was the peak, and it has dropped down, but it's still now over 4,000 a month. So we're seeing, crazy numbers from pretty much the same cohort of customers.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that we saw, the percentage of cases completed online versus in person for some of our cremation societies. Pre-pandemic, about 33% of families would do things online, and the rest would come in. After March of 2020, obviously it spiked because, we were kind of in this state of not knowing what was going on, but it has actually flipped. So now the majority of families will actually want to do things online or prefer to do things online, or maybe the funeral home's pushing them to do that now versus 33% actually coming in person. How do you feel that affected your business at Omega Society?
It helped us a great deal.
Did you see similar numbers?
Higher, probably. Mm-hmm. I would say for most of 2020 and 2021, we did virtually no in-person arrangements whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So we were probably like 19 out of 20 arrangements online.
Wow. Okay.
And again, those also had other advantages. The family could stay home and do the paperwork. Mm-hmm. We could do a virtual arrangement where the family didn't have to commute in their car. If you want us to hop on a live document with you and fill it out with you on the phone for 30 minutes, we'd much rather take that opportunity than have you come in, us have to leave our desk, go downstairs, meet with you that way. So it allowed us to do kind of virtual arrangements, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But then all the other added benefits, payment online, forms back and forth online. But that was a conscious choice on our part, just given our volume and our staff. So
some of this was driven definitely by you and your brother internally pushing this. But did you feel the pushback? Did you feel pushback from families thinking like, I want to come in, or you're taking this away from me, you're cheapening this experience of me actually being able to come into the funeral home? Did you feel that? Or did you get that sentiment?
March of 2020 through, October, November of 21, no resistance. Everyone was on the same page with the state of affairs in California and not doing unnecessary shopping or leaving the house. So this fell under that, and it was our job to make people feel comfortable doing that. And I think also the infrastructure that supported our business, hospice social workers and hospice nurses and hospital workers, they kind of told families what to expect, not to expect them to be able to go in, because they too couldn't go into the nursing home. They too couldn't go into the hospital. So they kind of had that expectation. I don't think they wanted that expectation. I don't think they wanted to have to do that. But there was no verbal reluctance most of the time.
Okay. What happened after October of 2021?
There were several families that didn't like some of the limitations that we kept, like limiting viewing sizes, still pushing for online arrangements if they had an email, things like that. So there was a small percentage. There was a percentage that still wanted to kind of go back the way they were. But overall, would you say it moved in the direction of everyone was it moved the needle a great deal overall.
Okay. So one of the things that we saw, and this may or may not be relevant to you, before March of 2020, we actually saw from some of our customers that 11% of families would actually just show up online and actually complete an arrangement, whether that be an imminent or at need arrangement, where they wouldn't even call the funeral home first. which was surprising to us. After March of 2020, what do you think this was? Think it went up or down?
It went up, and I would guess that it doubled at least. So
nope, you are wrong, Will. It's only 16.3%. So, people look at this stat, and the way I look at the stat is it's actually interesting because I think there's a sentiment, and I know you don't think this, but a lot of the sentiment that we get is that the online arrangement is just going to take out the need of a funeral director, or that like there's going to be this kiosk that funeral directors don't need to exist anymore. And what I would say is that may be the case, but it's a long way before that ever happens. Yeah. I think overwhelmingly, because I say 16.3%, what that means is that 83.7% of families still need to talk to somebody. They still want to be reassured that you're a decent human being and a real business, and that they can trust that you're going to take care of the family. So maybe they don't want to meet you in person in the arrangement office, but they still want to talk to you. They still need to have that rapport with you, or else they're not going to trust you, right? As much as I think online is a good tool, I think that's what it is. It's still a tool. There still needs to be someone driving it. There still needs to be someone on the other end that knows how to use it.
Do you have any like data separating at need from imminent self-service?
I could. I don't have it on this slide.
I'd be curious. I'd be curious because I think people are a lot more willing to go self-service imminent.
Yeah.
Because they know that like there's no imminent need, and they'll always follow up with a call, and there's no money on the line yet. So
yeah, definitely.
Like on average, we were probably getting like 1 to 3 imminents like through the site a day at one point,
without ever talking to that family first.
Yeah, because there was so much limited space that all the hospice workers were like, Omega will not deny you service if you have a pre-registration set up. So families were just hopping on and pre-registering a name and address, whatever, and then saying, I'm pre-registered. So at least I know my dad's going to get his body picked up when he passes away in my living room.
Yeah. This might be time for another episode, but the stories that I heard from SoCal of the refrigerated trucks, and those weren't just tall tales. Like that was actually what was happening in LA, right? People driving around trying to just find someone that'll help them.
Like every Friday for like months, because we don't really work on the weekends, but we need space in our fridge for, anywhere from 20 to 35 cases, depending on the weekend. I'd have to move decedents from the main refrigeration unit into their external trailer so that drivers had places to put the bodies while we weren't there. Or else there was literally no room for them to even enter. Like not only were the shelves full of decedents, but the rolling racks that were put in front of the shelves also filled all of the space. So you had to remove the rolling racks to even get anywhere in there.
So you had to pay Tetris just to get.
Absolutely.
That's insane. All right. So we saw a lot of interesting things. Like before the pandemic, a lot of what we saw people starting up new businesses. Maybe, they were a funeral director, but they were like, I could do, this online thing. I could be comfortable at, 10 cases a month. I can make a little bit of money and grow my business there. In certain areas, that was not the case after COVID hit because people were just looking for anybody that can help take care of their loved one. So what would you say the highest ratio of cases to licensed funeral director in our customers that we saw during the pandemic at the height? Yeah, at the height, how many cases per licensed funeral director was the most someone was doing?
This is like cases per counselor, or is this cases per...
So this was a single owner who set up everything to do online. He was in a decently populated area. He was doing maybe 20 cases a month. COVID hit. He had one driver to help do pickups and transportation. How many did he get up to and maintain for, it was about 2.5 months at a certain rate?
I would say 32, 33, 35.
That's low.
40?
75 cases per licensed funeral director. He was averaging 75 for 3 months or so by himself with just one other person.
Is he alive still?
No. I know he is, but he had to raise his prices. He was like, I can't handle the rate at which we're doing. I do have another funeral director who was in the same boat on a different coast in a big city who had to raise his prices over $1,000 for the cremation because he was like, I don't want any more business. Still barely saw a slowdown after raising his prices.
Yep.
And then he basically hired a manager and he took off, and he's like hasn't been back to the funeral home since because he just couldn't handle it. Like, I mean, this is possible. I'm not recommending that 75 is, but we did see the ability to have this happen, and it was not sustainable. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's like when we talked to Eric about this, I mentioned like I kind of found that our max was about 40 sustainably. If you're implementing like text message communication, lots of email communication to free up the time for really sensitive families that need a lot of phone communication, it's like about 40. But I mean, maybe you could get to 50, but I don't know. 75 is a lot. 75 is a lot. It's unsustainable.
Yeah, because I've talked to him since, like as early as like a few weeks ago, and he was like, I've not doing that many, and I'm like happy now. I'm like happier now. The work-life balance. There was no work-life balance. This is work-life. That was the only part of life he had.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on my end. Were there any other interesting data points that you saw in your business or things that you thought were interesting that people might not understand? Or is there anything that surprised you with your business that you saw during COVID that you didn't think was either possible or...
I was very pleasantly surprised with how we were able to iterate and make changes to operations given the circumstances. I was pleasantly surprised by how the team reacted to the implementation of very like tech heavy operations. And that was just a kind of a personal win for me, just because we had operated for so long and on paper, and this was...
Well, I will say that that's probably a very big byproduct of good management and you being able to instill that into your staff and employees and them being willing to trust you that those processes are. I mean, a lot of what we see will have a subset of the directors that are like totally embracing it, and then another set that are like the old school guys and they just like won't touch it. And then you have two different processes, meaning that if you're a family and you go to this business, there's a chance that you get a wildly different experience than the other person, right? Some may like that, and some, I mean, that might be really good for one family, but it might be really bad for another. So I would say that that's probably hats off to you and your brother who kind of implemented that, and your staff trusted you to make those changes.
Yeah. It's interesting just reflecting on it. It was just such a unique time just to see how people's behavior changed so quickly during COVID.
Yeah.
And then continued to change very quickly during COVID. I felt most people were really respectful and just understood it was just an unfortunate situation that we were all in. But as a business, I was kind of surprised at how accepting people were that there were no services for so long. And that was kind of, again, we got to the point where it's like, do we actually want to bring back this type of viewing? Or like, if we do bring it back, why don't we just put on the GPL, no more than 5 people, no more than 10 people, It keeps like, let us help ourselves make a better experience for families, and actually give ourselves permission to make those rules in an effort to serve families better, it allowed us to take second looks at things that we were doing or not doing and make changes.
Awesome. Well, that's it for the data. I definitely will have more, but I didn't want to get too crazy into it, and we've already taken.
That's cool. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how we can like chop up data to kind of see what's happening. And I think there's some pretty obvious moves that have happened in the past 2 years that indicate that, you know, because we've always talked about cremation rate and what death care is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And I know some people were like, well, you know, I'll get to it when I need to, or this was something that we can maybe focus on as we move later. But all of a sudden, I think we were forced into it, and it became something that is now commonplace. And I don't know if it's going to go back. I think we're kind of now at a new normal, and we're going to move from here.
I think so. And I think that's been reflected in my opinion and answer to that question about the industry in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I think as I kind of get more perspective on that, I think it may manifest itself in different ways with technology, or technology may be implemented in a little bit differently in certain places or for certain types of businesses. But ultimately, that expectation of online interaction and interface seamlessly is there for customers.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Will. I know it's been a few weeks since we've talked, but glad to have it get back on this train as we go.
Absolutely, man. Good to talk with you.
Yeah, you too, as always. Thank you very much for listening or watching now. Yeah, here we go. All right. See ya.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you ever want to know more, please find us at directcremation.com.